Hi, and welcome to the Happiness Coach podcast. My name is Lori Brandt, and I am the Happiness Coach. I believe our natural state is peace and calm, and the only thing keeping us from living life from that centered space are our limiting beliefs. It's my understanding that thoughts like, I'm not worthy, I'm not safe, or I'm not enough can be eliminated. Once revealed and questioned, they begin to lose their hold so that our natural state of greatness can rise up and into our present day experience. On this podcast, you'll listen in on real life coaching calls, interviews with leading experts, and open discussions exploring limiting beliefs and their transformation. If after listening you found it interesting or helpful, please follow and share. If it inspired you to consider becoming a life coach yourself, visit my website for upcoming ICF-approved life coach certification training dates at www.loribrandt.com. All right, let's jump in and get started. Today I have the privilege and the pleasure of interviewing Gina Hatzis. Now, Gina spoke at our Unleash Your Greatness conference in 2019 after her whirlwind viral video called The Too Much Woman. And we had a blast last year, and she is going to grace the stage again this year at Unleash Your Greatness 2020. Now, if you don't know about Gina is just this vibrant light because she stepped out on stage and she spoke her truth about something that really impacted her entire life. And that was the idea that she was told that she was too much the way that she was, just being her. And she tried to live within the standards of what people considered appropriate or right, or ultimately so that everyone around her could be in their comfort zone. So she learned to keep herself small, to fit into the mold of what other people believed was proper or right. And I'm just super excited because today she gives her voice again to the movement of how people nowadays are really digging deep, and they're starting to question, what it is that they're doing, how they are experiencing their life, and saying, you know what, is this really true for me? And do I need to be living in accordance to everybody else? What if I stepped into me and started to live my own truth and just embrace all of me, the too muchness, the not enoughness, and just, suck up everything that we can get out of life, because I really think that that's what we're here to do. So I spent an hour with Gina exploring that a year later and what that means for her. Hello, Gina.
Hey, baby.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's been a while since we chatted last. And I've been watching, you have been exploding. I mean, talk about the whirlwind tour.
Yeah, you know what? More than me exploding, I think it's the movement exploding. I think it's the right time and the right place. And this is the conversation that women want to be having, and men.
And what conversation's that?
Yeah, I think we're in a space now where we're shifting out of this expert paradigm, where we're looking outside of ourselves for the answers, where we're looking for the guy on the mount with the staff to tell us, who we should be and how we should act and what we should be doing. And we're looking more at wanting to really truly step into our own leadership and show up as ourselves and be seen for who we are. We're so tired of the facade. We're so tired of the
Yeah.
charade. There's a lot of words like authenticity and, Brené Brown's really big on vulnerability. I think this is a new paradigm where people are saying, I am so exhausted with carrying the weight of this mask and I want to show up as myself. And that's the message of the Too Much Woman movement. And that's why I think I'm exploding, because I am creating, I'm a conduit really for this conversation. That's all that I am.
So how did that happen for you? Making that transition from the expert paradigm and then
Yeah.
recognizing that you had to go inward.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that, because this March marked my 26th anniversary as a public speaker. And where I did start in this space, quite accidentally, honestly, I left journalism. I was a broadcaster for a while, and when I left that and I fell into speaking, I looked at all the models of other speakers, and they were very much standing in this expert energy that said, okay, here are the 5 things you need to do. We know what's best for you. And it's a model that we see is crumbling in every area, whether it's education, whether it's politics, whether it's healthcare, where we go to the doctor to say, fix us. Now we're taking our health into our own hands. Maybe we're looking at different options, alternative medicines. We're getting second opinions. We're looking inside, we see it crumbling in all these sectors. And so for me as a public speaker, I started off in that realm thinking, wow, I've got to become an expert in this field, and I have to be the one who tells people what to do, how to do it. And I understand now, I've moved into this space where I understand that what I really am, the highest expression of myself, is being a model of possibility that gives people the opportunity to step into a space where they're coming to answers for themselves. And so we can all be examples, we can share what's working for us, but ultimately self-empowerment is about coming back to ourselves, knowing that we have the answers within. And what we really need sometimes is just maybe a process or a model or some ideas of how to get there, but no longer are we looking outside of ourselves. And for me, that switch precipitated a huge leap in my visibility. It gave me the courage to speak Too Much Woman into existence, which has shifted the trajectory of my work.
So who
And
was your
I can
model? Who was your model that was for you that this was possible to step out of that I'm the expert paradigm into your own?
Yeah, you know what? I don't think there's any one person. I will say that the people that I always admired were people who lived on the fringe, and I was always drawn to people who stepped outside and scribbled outside of the lines. And
Like who? Can you give me an
so
example?
public figures that people would know would be people like the Maya Angelou's and the Oprah Winfrey's and any like the Lady Gagas, who kind of said, I know that this is what's acceptable. I'm going to do something that's maybe not acceptable. And we almost have, like, even the Madonna. I grew up in, I'm a child of the 70s and 80s, and so
Yeah.
that swinging, we almost have to swing the pendulum the completely other way to be shocking and to really like shake up what's acceptable, so that we can come back to a place for us individually that works. And that was always appealing to me. I always wanted to be outside of the norm. I always
So
wanted
you're
to
saying
push that edge.
you wanted to do this within yourself, is shake up your own paradigm of what was acceptable. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
because yes, because well, it has to start with us. Because for me, what I hear repeatedly now, traveling the globe and speaking to thousands, well, hundreds for sure, and thousands of women online, is that we all want that, and what stops us is the judgment. What stops us is the fear of criticism. What stops us is, what are the repercussions of me standing fully as Gina, as me showing up fully in what I call my too muchness, as me showing up as self-expressed without having to morph into how I think I should be in order to receive love and acceptance. And so that's probably the number one thing that holds us back.
So
And
how did you
although
do it?
it's really popular to say, I don't care what people say, I don't give a damn, and maybe we do come to an age, I don't think it's necessarily an age thing, but I hear a lot of women come to a space, hopefully, where it starts to matter less and less, but it still is a habit, right? It's a habit that we've replicated over and over. And so that backlash is really what scares a lot of people.
So what are you talking about when you say step into Gina? Like,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
Yeah, so I started off as a corporate speaker,
Yeah.
and in that space, it was, especially the speaker world, was a very male-dominated industry. It still very much is. It's changing. And so what I thought was, the way that I'm going to be accepted, speaking is all about rapport building and trust, and a lot of times my audiences were and still are, from a corporate perspective, male dominated.
Mhm.
So I needed to man up. And so I would take Gina, which naturally is vivacious and voluptuous and very feminine. I have a very masculine side and a very feminine side, but I would mask all of that, and I would pretend to be one of the boys. And in my language, in how I dressed, in how I showed up, and even how I spoke. And I really was trying to be one of them so that they would
But what
like
if
me.
somebody said you were just being professional?
Yeah, so I get that all the time. It's interesting because um, in that space, although I had success, what I realized is that I was still seen as a woman, and I was still treated as a woman. I was still taken advantage of. I was still objectified, no matter how I showed up. And so what I realized is that playing the game really didn't advance my cause and didn't fulfill me.
And what
And
do you
what I
mean
would
by
rather,
game?
yeah,
What do you
playing the
mean by
game, and and
playing?
and pretending that I was. So for example, I would man up in my how what I wore. So I'm quite a voluptuous woman. I
Yeah.
would bind myself, like literally. I get like like literally minimizing bras. I would wear very um, masculine suits, low shoes, no heels. I would make sure no skin was showing. Oftentimes my hair was in a bun, minimal makeup. I bought fake glasses. I don't even wear glasses, and I would buy fake glasses to look more studious or into. I would try to change me to show up in a way that would be more acceptable to them. And what still repeatedly happened, to my frustration, is I was still never accepted in that world in that way. And although I had success, what I realized is my success wasn't because I was manning up and playing like one of the boys. My success was because over time, what I was doing was building my credibility. But
Right.
what I'd much rather do, and what I've done now, because I still do a lot of corporate work globally, is I show up as Gina. And you asked about professionalism. I mean, I certainly wouldn't go to a corporate talk in a plunging V-neck top. That doesn't feel safe to me. However, I do show up more in my feminine energy. That feels good to me, so that when I'm speaking, I'm really speaking from the heart of Gina. And that for me is where I'm most powerful. That for me is where I feel most fulfilled,
So when you
whether
say
they
that,
like it or not.
coming in as, okay, so you're coming in as professional, and now you're coming in as professional speaking from the heart. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, and also showing up in the flavor of me. I mean, 10 years ago, I would
Yeah.
never wear leopard print and have pink hair. I,
Yeah.
I'm never down, and like this would never. Um, but what I almost see it as a challenge, to be quite frank, Lori. Like I I want to go in and say, how can I demonstrate my value and my gift and my genius to you, despite the fact that when you look at me, you don't see a traditional professional woman.
And you're doing that online too, right? So you've had a lot
Yes,
of flack about this, and you also
I do, and I love
how
it.
you're,
I love it because
yeah.
how we change anything is the rub.
Yeah.
It's the rub, and I care about. I Let me say this: I didn't choose this intentionally, consciously. I would say I've always felt this way, but when the Too Much Woman speech that sparked the movement went viral, I was thrust into a position where I was representing this energy, and I said, if I'm here, I'm gonna go all in. And it hasn't been easy, and it hasn't been comfortable, but what I've decided is it's absolutely worth it. Even on LinkedIn, I remember after all this happened, I went on LinkedIn and I looked at the picture I had. It was a picture of me as a blonde. My hair was very, well kept. I had this huge scarf. There was no skin, like right up to the neck, minimal. Like it doesn't even look like me. Like it doesn't even. And I remember looking at that picture, thinking, I don't even want to be seen as other than I am. So I changed and LinkedIn is a professional social media site. So I just refuse to play the game. And if that is going to deter people from being curious about my work, so be it. That's okay. This is how we change things, and I care about changing things. That's my top priority.
So if you were looking back, and I know, I'm too much, but were there any other limiting beliefs that you feel would kind of encapsulate the kind of things that you were believing back then when you were trying to fit into that persona of what a professional speaker would be?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there were so many, and I've continued to unpack them. This experience the past 2 years for me has really been like getting my master's in Too Much Woman. I mean, I had no idea when I wrote the speech what I
Yeah,
actually meant. Like it was almost like it was written through me divinely, and now I've had 2 years to get my master's in what it actually means. And
right.
there are so many things. I mean, first of all, I have to speak about this. I'm a mother of two teenagers.
Hmm.
What does it mean to be a mother? How should we, or could we, or might we act or show up and be, that is acceptable as a mother? When I became a mother, I shut down every part of me that was um, sensual, or too passionate, or I mean, I was very careful and mindful about how I wanted to be as a mother, but I
So a
still felt
mother
all those
can't be
things.
sensual, a mother can't be passionate, a mother
No,
can't have me
no,
time. Was there, yeah.
not at all. And you can see the pictures of me. I mean, you could just see like how I changed, the before and the after, because I bought into the belief that this is what a good mother looks like, and this is what a good mother says, and this is what a good mother does. And so that was huge. So it wasn't only in my professional world, but
Mm.
it was in and it's not only even just how I looked, it's what I would dare to speak about. Like even 5 years ago, I've had my blog online now for 8 or 9 years on Facebook. 4 or 5 years ago, I never would have talked about my sensual revolution. There wasn't even a picture of me to be seen. There was one tiny little headshot, but I would never put a selfie because so I've allowed I recognize that, I'm 44 years old, and there are a lot of women who have dimmed or hidden the part of them that wants to be self-expressed. And it doesn't necessarily mean sexually, but it just means, do I dare to even wear a nose ring as a mother, color my hair? Do I dare to talk about these topics? Do I dare to even be visible? Dare to be visible. A lot of people ask me, what do your kids think about you and what you're doing and yeah, so that was a huge limiting belief, that once I became a mother, it really cut off, like literally from the neck down, the rest of me and my expression.
Yeah. It's interesting. I had been watching your posts, and I saw that you did the fire walk, and you also mentioned something earlier about having to almost go to the extreme to
Yeah.
break the old habits of keeping yourself small. And the fire walk really is about that. So maybe if you could share a little bit about the fire walk, but maybe
Yeah.
how, the posts that you're doing is like, it appears to be like a fire walk for you
Yes.
to go
Every
to
day's
the
a fire walk for
extreme.
me.
Yeah.
Every day's a fire walk for me. I really sat. There's a beautiful quote by Maya Angelou, who's one of my true mentors. I'm
Mm,
so grateful for her existence. That says, "Courage is the greatest virtue because without it, we really can't practice any other virtue." And
mm,
I remember hearing that, and that struck me. This was years ago, and I remember writing it down, and it continues to really sit in my heart, because courage, is the willingness to be uncomfortable and to know that there's something greater than your discomfort on the other side. It's the willingness to go there. So the fire walk, and it's funny because I did an event in Arizona that culminated in a fire walk. And I thought it was a great idea. It's symbolic. It's so beautiful. The fire, the ashes, the flame, the phoenix rising. When it came time to actually walk across the fire, I thought, what the hell did I get myself into? This is like way beyond my comfort zone. I actually had a fire phobia for many, many years as a child. We had a fire in my house. And so I
I
had that
remember
moment.
looking at your face. You said, "Oh, the line's getting smaller."
Yes. Well, it's so funny because it was my event. So they wanted me to lead the firewalk, to kick it off and be the first one. And I ended up being the last one because I literally just had a moment of thinking, I don't know if I could do this. And
Yeah,
so that moment, and we all have those moments where I'm standing and everybody's cheering, right? And I'm like, this is the moment. You have that panic and you just drop into it. Feels so much safer to stay here. But what I want to say to anyone listening, and I know this to be true for me, is that we think that we're safer. You know, there's a belief that we are safer by not taking the risk. There's a belief that by choosing our comfort zone, we're actually in a comfortable, safe space. But the truth is, we're always choosing, and there is always a risk, always a risk. And so we really have to be clear and honest with ourselves that whether we choose to push through and be courageous or dare to do the thing or not, both are risks,
Yeah.
and both are uncomfortable. And so we just have to decide what is at the end. If we play that all the way out, what is literally at the end of that fire walk for you. So not choosing to do the thing, and the thing could be speaking up at home,
Yeah.
telling your partner how you feel,
Yeah.
speaking up at work, writing the book, being visible on, like, it could be a million things, wearing red lipstick. It doesn't, we have to decide if not doing that thing, like play that all the way out. If you don't do that thing, what are the repercussions of that? Like really embody, what are the repercussions 6 months out, a year from now, 6 years from now, on your deathbed? Like play it out, full out. And then we have to play out what are the potential possibilities of choosing to walk through the fire. And that for me was, the fire walk was so symbolic, because what was on the other side, just knowing that I could dare to do that thing, was so much more worth it. They're both uncomfortable, but it
Yeah.
was so much more fruitful for me.
You're going to be speaking at the conference, which I'm really excited about having you
Thank you for
back.
having me back. I loved
Yes.
it. I loved it last year. So thank you, Lori. The people, I still am connected to so many people who are at the conference, and I consistently hear how incredible the entire weekend was. And so thank you for having me back. It's such a pleasure.
Oh, and I'm so excited about having you, because really your whole process is really big and bold, showing off, really what challenging limiting beliefs is all about. And it's about exactly what you said. You can stay in the comfort zone and not change anything. And you're going to be okay if that's what your choice
Yeah,
is. But what is the risk of not taking
yeah,
the
yeah.
chance? And
And
so,
we convince ourselves that
yeah,
that's safe. Like we
yeah.
convince ourselves that we're okay with that decision, but we know in our heart of hearts that it eats away at us. There are repercussions, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what was your comfort zone? So you talked a little bit about speaking. You would try to dress like, professionally, similar to a man. Were there any other places of comfort zone for you?
Oh my gosh, name it, every area of my life. I mean, even where how I showed up. So I talked about parenting. Even how I showed up in relationship. You know, almost in every way. And how I spoke to people, being very mindful of how I'd be received. Walking on eggshells. I was always I always like to push the boundary, but I would take safe risks.
Mm,
Those what we call calculated risks. So risks where it would be a little dangerous, but not so dangerous that there would be huge repercussions. And
right.
so I was always careful about that. But I do want to say something that I think is really important, Lori, about this, is that we often think that being courageous and bold is like leaping off tall buildings, or like, you know, coloring your hair red, or like, doing something really outrageous. But for me, what, being bold sometimes is the willingness to get up in the morning and face a decision that you've made over and over and over again. Being bold doesn't have to be these huge extravagant leaps of faith. Being bold and courageous is sometimes small. I know sometimes when I was going through a really hard time, being courageous was getting out of bed.
Hmm.
Being courageous was telling the truth in relationship. Being courageous was telling the truth to my mom, who I knew loved me, but I
Yeah.
knew she would be hurt if I told her what I was really going through, how depressed I was, because it would, So I always am so careful, because I am a model of possibility of big, bold, and courageous online.
Yeah.
But I always want to be careful to say, this is not the only frame for being bold and courageous. Sometimes that's as simple as saying, I'm going to prioritize my pleasure and my health. I'm going to start to reclaim my sovereignty. I'm going to speak up when I normally would bite my tongue.
Mhm.
That this is just as important. So I don't want to ever send the message that
Yeah.
you have to look like me or be like me or do what I'm doing. Courage takes many forms.
Yeah. I remember there was a time when I remember saying, okay, I'm just going to get through this minute. And
Exactly.
then, you know what? Then I'll tackle the next minute then. But for
Yes.
right now, I'm just going to do this minute. And honestly, it did feel like I was jumping off a mountain or walking through fire just to do the
I've been
minute.
there.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
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 So, this conference is really going to tap into ways of identifying when we've got these limiting beliefs or these comfort zone ideas, and acknowledging that they actually draw us away from our natural state of peace and calm, or they feel comfortable but they're still not in alignment. Do you have any thoughts about that for you?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because I feel like we make a judgment around um, being courageous, like unleashing our greatness.
Mhm.
Sometimes we think, well, that sounds really scary. But what we don't really take into account, or we don't tally, are all the repercussions for not unleashing our greatness.
Mhm.
Talk about headaches that I had for so long, being out of alignment, right? Talk about, I used to think, like, why do there was a period of about a year and a half where I had such neck pain that I could not turn my head. And I would change my mattress, I changed my pillow, I went to an acupuncturist, went to a massage therapist, I did all the things, but really look at what that stiffness, what that symbolically was representing for me. So there, all of the ways that our body tells us that we are out of alignment.
Mhm.
Lack of energy, that's such a huge one for me. I mean, I would claim that I had these like, what's wrong with me? I just can't get out of bed. And so much of it was because of the weight of my indecisiveness, the
Mhm.
weight of the masquerade. Which is heavy. It literally feels heavy and exhausting to pretend to be other than what we are, to be out of alignment. Just take, like, when you're in alignment, it's like you're flowing down a river. And it's not to say that, in a river there are still some boulders and there's still some bumpy parts, but you are still in the flow moving forward. And when we are not, when we're resistant, when we're in the river and we're trying to, like, hold ourselves back, it's bumpy. And so sometimes I think we overlook, because we're so accustomed to it. We spent a lifetime maybe being out of alignment.
Being on the bumpiness.
Yeah, that we don't even know. Like, it becomes normal for us.
We
You
think
know what
that
I'm
we're
saying?
aligned in the bumpiness, but we're
Yeah.
not.
Like,
Yeah.
I thought I lived that facade for so long
Mhm.
that it was normal for me, that I didn't understand that I was out of accord. I just thought this is the way that it is. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's landing. Like, and so
Yeah.
I didn't understand that the moment, literally the moment, I'm not trying to be dramatic, but the moment I said, this is the truth, like, oh my God, this is the truth. It was like, there's an ease and a peace. It's still uncomfortable, but just inwardly, my body just could release all that, and it just felt like the weight came off. And I had chronic sore throat and throat infections. I had neck pain all the time, and those, I haven't experienced those in years, since I started the unlayering process. And so what I wanted to say succinctly, which it took me a long time to say, was that when we are out of alignment, when our limiting beliefs are running our lives, and sometimes it's so normalized that we don't even have an awareness about it because we've been that way for so long, we start to think that all of these things that we are feeling and experiencing are normal and it's part of life. And I want to tell you that it's not. And that,
Yay. Yes.
yeah, and that, just that alignment, that tweaking. And again, it's 1 degree. You don't have to leap off tall buildings. Sometimes it's just 1 degree can really can really exponentially help you move in flow, because changing one area of our lives can't help but bleed into the other areas of our lives.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. This
Courage is a
is,
muscle. Courage is a
yes.
muscle, right?
Yes. This
Yeah,
year, we're kind of focusing in on too about recognizing what you're talking about, the state
yeah,
of alignment. And that, life happens and we'll sometimes waver and move out, but
yeah.
it's being able to identify when you're moving out so you can move back in. You can
Yes.
choose to move back in.
Oh my God, this is so good.
Constantly following the path, like, well, this is happening, and then this, and then just continually moving yourself further and further and further out of alignment,
Yes.
so that you have this ability to just kind of like, you're in alignment, you're out, but you come back in, and that's the flow.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you said this because I make an intention to blog about this all the time.
Mhm.
The assumption is to look at someone, let's say me, for example,
Yeah,
because to look at someone and say, oh, there she is on the other side.
yeah.
That's my goal. And so probably the number one comment I get is, I'm not there yet.
Hmm.
I'm working on it. I'm trying so hard. I want to be like you.
Yeah,
How did you get there? I'm not there. There is no there.
there is no
There's
there.
no X on the map that you can mark and say, I'm going to get there and then I'm going to be good. I am constantly sliding back
Yeah.
into old habits. I'm constantly being pulled back by limiting beliefs. The spiritual journey is a circle, right? And so what I used to think was, oh my God, I'm hitting this wall again. I thought I dealt with this shit. Like, I'm the too much woman. How can I be like playing small and hiding? And I would lash out at myself and be so frustrated, admonish myself, thinking I've been here already. I thought I figured this out. But the truth is, the spiritual journey is a circle, and you keep coming back to the same limiting beliefs, perhaps in different ways or in different
Mhm.
disguises or in different, so that we can have a deeper relationship with it. And we can practice, just like waves on the shore, they continue to come back. And so rather than get frustrated and angry and think, oh my gosh, I'm here again, I recognize that the lesson, the opportunity comes back. I'm out of alignment, pull myself back out of alignment. So this goes back to the expert model, the beginning of our conversation, where we think that there's someone who's arrived and this is the way. That's such a dinosaur paradigm, because the
Yeah.
truth is, if there's anybody out there saying, I'm on the other side, and here's how you can be on the other side, run the other way. Because we really, and I've had such an extraordinary, you asked me pre-interview, what did you learn this year? I had the extraordinary opportunity to speak with some of the most empowered women that I know on the public platform. Elizabeth Gilbert and Dr. Christiane Northrup and Tara Trent, who's Oprah's #1 favorite guest of all time. Being backstage with them and witnessing them in their humanity,
Hmm.
witnessing them having, a little discomfort, or,
Yeah, yeah.
feeling self-conscious, reminds me that there's no there. There is there is no end. And that, I think, it might sound scary, because you're like, oh, this is like perpetual hamster wheel. But to reframe that and say, the journey is the day-to-day commitment. The journey is, it's like, is it the wedding or the marriage? Like,
Mhm.
it's not like, there's not like a day. It's the long-term journey. And that's why we say, enjoy the journey,
Mhm.
because there's no end
Yeah.
um, place, which
That's
is a
why,
good thing.
yeah, that's why I this year at the conference, I was getting, you're the happiness coach, so does that mean you're like happy all the time? I'm like, okay, well, no, that
Right? Right?
no. And I think that really what I wanted to really convey this year, and to be able for people to experience, is that it's not about me being happy. I kind of feel like, okay, if this is my alignment, then sometimes I move out of alignment seeking more than what I already have in alignment, but
Yes. Up
nothing's
level.
required. So like my happiness is actually in alignment. It's not in perpetual state of like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
like in super
Imagine that kind of
perpetual
world,
things
right?
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and because we know that happiness really, by definition, is progress. Like, we know that we are most happy when we can feel that we are progressing, when we can see that we are evolving, when there's growth. Like, that is truly the deepest part, is seeing how far we've come. In that sense, then we know that our soul constantly wants to give us opportunities to, I don't know what the word up level, or to expand that space of joy and happiness or peace or
Yeah.
whatever, however you
You know
describe
what?
it.
You,
And
you
so,
touch on something really important too. I think that, defining happiness for yourself and knowing what that feels like and when you're in it and when you're not in it is really crucial, because
yeah,
my definition of happiness and experience of it could be completely different than yours. And I think also we have this conference is about experiencing alignment, like
mm,
so that when you're in it and you're not.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
good.
And a lot of that comes from understanding the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
If we are setting up ourselves to be happy when we reach the goal weight, write the book, step on the stage, whatever XYZ, what we know to be true is that for any goal that we set, even if we do achieve it, our brains are happy for like 0.35 seconds. And then our amygdala, the oldest, mammalia part of our brain says, okay, now what?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that extrinsic motivation or that extrinsic happiness outside of ourselves is a moving target. We're constantly going to chase it. So understanding that happiness, as you're describing, is really an intrinsic
Hmm.
decision, something that fills us up intrinsically. And so that's an important marker for us for sure.
So, Gina, share with us what have you been up to? I mean, it's really been an incredible, because we left last year in May after the conference, and
Yeah.
you had just come back from Arizona.
Okay.
Previous
Yep.
to that, and then what happened since? Like, I
So
know
what
you're busy.
after that, I continued the tour in Dallas, Texas, and San Francisco. I'm gonna miss some place. Calgary, Edmonton. Where else was I? Oh my gosh, New Hampshire,
Brazil.
um, Brazil. I'll be in 2 weeks. I'll be in Europe. We're doing Too Much Woman Paris and opening up Europe and the UK, Argentina. It, it, it's wonderful, and more than that, like I said, it's been a deepening process for me. It's been wonderful to meet everybody face to face, all the people that I've met, and to understand that while we're all so much the same, we are all so different.
Mhm.
Every area that I went to, there was a little bit of a different flavor and energy in terms of what too much meant to them. That was interesting to me. Like I
That's
said, I
really
keep
cool.
unpacking more and more. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
too
can you
much
tell me
energy in
about
San Francisco was vastly different than too much woman energy in Edmonton, Canada. So that was a learning.
what do you
So
mean
much
by that?
learning.
Can you share a little bit more about what you mean by that? Because that's
Yeah,
fascinating. Yeah,
it was fascinating to me. So to be very honest, Too Much Woman was such a personal thing. First
yeah,
and foremost, I thought no one's going to get it because that's just my thing. And
yeah.
then understanding 40 million people are like, no, that's my thing too. By the way, that's me too. So then I had to share this. And in order to share it, I started to get curious about, well, what the heck? I wouldn't never look at you, um, X person on Facebook
Yeah.
and declare you a too much woman. I mean, and so I started to be open to expanding and being curious about what that meant for different people. Even men identify as too much. So I released my definition
Ownership.
of it. Yeah, I released ownership, which it was tough initially to do
Yeah,
because I thought, do people not get it, or are they getting it in their own way?
yeah,
And then on the tour, what I realized is it's really what it really is in its most loose definition is any way that we've been told that we are wrong. Any way that we've been said, this is not acceptable,
yeah,
Lori, as you are, so it needs to change. And so you're too much, or sometimes we've been told that we're not enough, but it's just the opposite side of the same
yeah,
coin. It's just
yeah.
linguistics. Um, and so what I recognize is that the energies were very different from city to city, but they were all, what was similar was the fact that we've been told all this time that as we are unacceptable. And so we spend a lifetime morphing ourselves to be loved and accepted and okay, thinking that normal was safe, and it has been. We're changing that. Thinking that normal was ideal, that we should want to be this way, like we should want to be like everyone else.
Mhm.
And that was the highest expression of ourselves. And the Too Much Woman message is, you're not. We shine not for adoration. We shine because the sun, our radiance, will not be dimmed.
Okay, that's really beautiful. Yeah. So when let's say San Francisco, what was their idea of too much? What was coming up in that area?
Oh my gosh, well, I'm glad you started there. There was it was no holds barred in San Francisco. I we had I was even schooled, and I'm so appreciative for the opportunity to be educated on even gender definite. We couldn't even we called it too much woman, but the A was X'd out, and so recognizing that gender fluidity comes into play. Like, what does it even mean to be
Too
too
much?
much identifying as a woman? And so that was like, oh my gosh, I hadn't even. I mean, I was really
Yeah.
speaking about me as a too much woman,
Yeah.
but we had the gamut of sexual expression and identification in San Francisco. Um,
And
in
the awareness
Edmond,
of that to even X out the A, right? Like that is a whole nother level.
oh, that was a whole nother level. And I really needed, like, I really pulled my host aside and said, I need more information. Like, what, they're in such a different much more advanced space
Yeah.
than I am there, just culturally. And they've been using this language for years. So I had
Yeah.
to really up level my
Yeah.
language when I was speaking there. But then I went to Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, completely different. I mean, there we had I always feature too much women who were locally stepping into their too muchness. And we had a doctor there. Like, we had professionals. We had like the top of the line, like women in politics, women in the medical field, which traditionally are very unaccepting of anyone's too muchness. You know, you have to act a certain way and be a certain way to move up the ladder. And to see them self-expressed in their too muchness was completely different from San Francisco.
Mm.
It was about daring to speak up, in that atmosphere, in a corporate or archaic industry or archaic space, like medicine, when it was, you know, very professional. So, and politics, where it's like you don't want to swing too much either way. So
Yeah.
I just have learned so much. I've learned so much from my audience. I'm so grateful. I'm still learning.
And so what plans do you have upcoming in the next year or so?
Yeah, so what plans I have right now, I'm really excited about, not only expanding to Europe, and ultimately we're trying to get to Australia because that's like our third largest audience, and so that we can learn more and so that it can be more all encompassing. But what I'm really excited about for the movement itself is really starting to take the spotlight and really focus it on women who are expressing themselves in their too muchness in their own way. And like I said, in every city it's different, and because it's a global movement, I really want to showcase the spectrum of how a woman can show up, or a man. I've got to think of in their too muchness. And so, really looking at ways that we can showcase women being self-expressed, because we need to see each other, Lori. We need to see each other daring to show up in this way. We need to be models of possibility for one another. We need to see, you know, Sharon in Missouri, and we need to see, you know, Edna, who's in Ireland. And we need many, many examples, more than the Gina face, of what it means to show up in your too muchness. You
Yeah,
know, we
because
need
that was
everybody to speak.
it was a big piece for me too, because to be able to show up and run a conference from a wheelchair, like, I mean,
Yeah,
that
right?
that was scary. Like, you
Yeah.
know,
And look at, so you being self-expressed in your too muchness
mhm.
in that way is exactly what the movement's about. And now I'm getting emotional because how many other women need to see you in that space? They
And
need to see
yeah,
a woman like you in that space, and that's what the movement is about. So
and I
that's what I'm excited about.
yeah, and I think too, I just really want to give you the platform because I believe I have a deep understanding of what you're doing, the posts that you do, and that, you know, it's not about you thinking or sharing or believing that everyone needs to put themselves out like you to have the experience you're having,
Yeah.
but it's for all of us to put ourselves out and into what's possible for us, regardless of how we look, regardless of where we came from, regardless of the challenges we faced, that there is just more greatness for you and for everyone else if we all step into that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
This is how we change things. This is
yeah,
truly how we change things. Each one of us individually, with the support of one another and the backing of one another
yeah,
and the modeling of one another,
yeah,
to give us the opportunity in baby steps in all
yeah,
the ways
yes.
to,
So
to
the
do that.
conference is a bit of a baby step for anyone that's new to this, but also a bit of a challenge maybe for those that have been on the path. And I think that, not to overlook the circle you're talking about, that, in the space of, okay, yes, dynamic speakers, I believe that, and the conference itself is designed for people to tap into their greatness, but people coming together in the spirit of being themselves, right?
Yeah.
The
I
energy of that is unbelievable.
It really is. I
Mhm.
really felt that last year. And
Yeah,
it's so humbling, truly, like that word is so overused, but it's so humbling to be in a space with all of these women. I may be at the front of the stage, but what I know to be true is that any one of those women could be at the front of the stage with a microphone in hand, sharing wisdom that they've carried
yes,
on their journey. And I think if we don't create spaces where women can see themselves in that light, then we're really holding back from the world the
yeah.
richness and the gifts that all of us individually bring. And so I'm grateful for you for creating that space for women. So thank you for doing that, Lori.
Oh, well, thank you for, being a part of this journey for everyone here. So Friday night, you're gracing the stage, and you're going to be talking about the too much woman. And, what can an attendee expect Friday evening, based on your experiences being on stage around the world, really?
Yeah. Well, what I can say is that um, a lot of our conversation, and I'm hoping that it's not just me talking, but conversation. I want to ignite conversation. I want to give ourselves permission and pause, a pattern interrupt, if you will, because we go along and we get along and we go along and our days blur into weeks, into months. But create a little pattern interrupt, put a little wedge in our thinking, and challenge everyone who comes Friday night to really consider ways that they are dimming their too muchness, ways that they are maybe not fully stepping into themselves as fully expressed. Because like I said, it becomes a habit. 90% of our life is run by habit. We think the same thoughts, we take the same actions, we feel the same ways over and over again. And because it's so repetitive, we just assume that's who we are. I hear all the time, this is who I am. I've been this way for 60 years. And so I'm hoping that Friday night is going to um, give people permission to get curious about their too muchness and ways that they are perhaps dimming, and to imagine, to fantasize what it would be like to step into that space in some way, and to imagine the impact that's going to have on not only their lives but the people that they touch. And that is exciting to me.
And just to end, if you wouldn't mind sharing, what would be some of the major things that you've noticed since you were able to step into your too muchness?
For myself,
Yeah.
yeah, oh gosh, there's so many. I'm on a new book. I um, I prioritize self-trust. If there's one big kahuna lesson that I've learned, there are so many, but one that consistently seems to be a theme that is the foundation of everything is cultivating self-trust. I think I never realized how important it is to trust myself. And what that means to me is not trusting that, whatever I'm going to do is going to work out. It's not like confidence, like I'm going to hit the stage, I'm going to kill it. I'm going to write the book and people are going to love it. I'm going to, express my love and people are going to, accept it or want it or reciprocate it. It's none of those things. Self-trust means it's an assured reliance that no matter what happens, because life is unpredictable, because we can't control all the factors, no matter what happens, I will come back to take care of Gina. I will figure out what I need to do and what needs to be done to honor myself. And so I'm really focused on that, on building, and it's a muscle, building my self-trust, because I believe that for so many of us, our self-trust has been displaced. It's been taken from us. We've been told that we don't know what's best for us. Our parents know better, our teachers know better, our politicians know better, our doctors know better. Everybody else seems to know what's
Yeah.
best for us instead of us. And I think that's one of the reasons the coaching industry is so big, because a good coach, the philosophy, the true philosophy of coaching, a good coach isn't there to tell you what to do, but to create the space so you can come to your answers yourself. And for me, that is the epitome of self-trust and peace and happiness. And so that's been probably the one of the biggest takeaways for me.
I feel like when you're describing that, that feels to me like bringing yourself back into alignment, like no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
no matter what.
Thank you, Gina. I'm so looking forward to May 1st. And thank you so much for spending this time with us and allowing people to get to know a little bit about you before the big weekend.
Yes, thank you. What a joy. See you all there. I am so excited to squeeze you all.
Thank you. You've been listening to Lori Brandt, the Happiness Coach. If you enjoyed the program, please go to iTunes and follow, rate, or leave a comment. If you're interested in one-on-one coaching, life coach certification, go to my website, loribrandt.com, or perhaps even attending our Unleash Your Greatness conference so greatness can reflect back in beautiful Ridgeway, Ontario at the Buffalo Canoe Club on the shores of Lake Erie. You can learn more at www.unleashmygreatness.com.